My wife was earning money from her intimate things. I'm shocked by what she was hiding. I've always prided myself on knowing my wife better than anyone. We met in college. She was studying graphic design. I was deep into my business major. We clicked instantly, bonding over late-night study sessions and shared walks through the campus. She had this quiet strength, a mix of intelligence and creativity, that I admired. We both come from modest beginnings, and over the years, we built a life we were proud of. Life after college hadn't been easy. We moved to a small apartment in the city while I worked my way up in a tech startup, and she spent long hours at her design job. There were stretches of time when our schedules barely aligned, but we made it work. Date nights, long weekends away, and talking about the future. We both dreamed of success, though our visions sometimes diverged. For her, it was always about more than just money. It was about freedom, the ability to create something meaningful, to express herself in ways the world would recognize. For me, it was about security, having a stable job, building a future we could rely on, and ensuring we never had to worry about bills or retirement. A few years into our marriage, things started to settle. We'd upgraded to a nicer home, I was promoted at work, and she'd gotten more freelance design gigs on the side. We were doing well, maybe too well. There were still some months when we didn't spend as much time together as I'd like. But I chalked that up to the pressures of adult life. I'd like to think I trusted her implicitly. I'd always believed she was open with me about everything that mattered. But when I found the emails, when the truth came out, I realized just how wrong I was. It all began with a slight shift in her behavior. There were late nights when I'd come home, and she'd be on her laptop, but not doing any of the usual freelance work. She'd quickly close the screen whenever I walked into the room, but I'd never questioned it. She was a private person, always had been. She didn't share every thought in her head with me, and I never expected her to. Then there were the occasional unusual purchases, some new lingerie, high-end fabrics for design projects, and strange little packages that would show up at our door with no return address. At first, I dismissed it. Maybe she had a new idea for a project, something to design or create on her own. But soon, it became too frequent to ignore. I knew something was different. It wasn't that she was being distant or cold, it was subtler than that. She'd sometimes get defensive when I asked what she was up to, or there'd be awkward pauses in conversations when certain topics came up. I didn't press her too hard. After all, she'd always been fiercely independent, and I'd learned over the years not to hover. But the nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. The revelation came on a random Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen making dinner, and she was in the other room, her laptop open on the couch. The email notification popped up on her screen, an order confirmation for a set of underwear. But the message wasn't from a retailer. The sender was a private buyer, and the subject read, "Shipment of your intimates." I froze, trying to piece it together, not wanting to believe what my eyes were telling me. My heart raced, and before I knew it, I had clicked into the email. That's when I found it, the first of many messages. Customers discussing how they appreciated her personal touch, expressing their satisfaction with her unique designs, and requesting more intimate photos. I quickly closed the laptop, my hands shaking. My mind was reeling, my thoughts racing. No, this couldn't be true. She wouldn't do this. Not my wife, not the woman I loved. When she came back into the room, I could hardly look at her. The tension was unbearable. I tried to act normal, but every time I glanced at her, my mind flashed back to those emails. How could I not confront her about this? And what would I even say? I wanted answers. No, I needed them. After dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I saw something today." She looked up, her eyes wide with confusion. "What do you mean?" I found the emails. The ones from the people buying your lingerie. Her face went pale, and for a long moment she didn't say anything. I could see the guilt, the shame in her eyes. Then, in the quietest voice, she said, "I'm sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this." What followed was an evening that neither of us would ever forget. She told me everything, how it had started innocently enough, just a way to make a little extra money during a tough financial period, a hidden side hustle that seemed harmless at first. She explained how she had stumbled across an online community of women doing the same thing, selling their worn items and even posting suggestive photos. The more she got into it, the more it felt like a secret she couldn't share. At first it was just something to do when times were tight. She thought it wouldn't matter, nobody would find out. But then the money started coming in. It was easy money. Some of the buyers were regulars. They'd even requested custom photos, one-of-a-kind lingerie sets, personal notes from her, And then there was the rush, the power of being desired by strangers, the thrill of living a double life. She never intended to hide it forever. She just didn't know how to bring it up, afraid I'd judge her or think she was doing something wrong. And honestly, I was stunned. I had no idea what to say. In the days that followed, I struggled with everything I'd learned. Anger, confusion, and jealousy bubbled up, but so did understanding. She hadn't done anything criminal or even harmful, but there was still that lingering question: why had she kept it from me? I realized that my own reaction was influenced by my insecurities, by how I viewed her actions in a world where relationships and finances were often tainted by shame or secrecy. But the more I thought about it, the more I understood that the secrecy wasn't about me. It was about her own fears, about the part of her that had sought freedom in ways I hadn't known. We didn't come to a decision that night. We had a lot to talk about, but in the end, we agreed to approach it honestly together. She promised never to hide something that important from me again. I promised to try and see things from her perspective, to not let my pride get in the way. As we worked through it, I realized that relationships are more complex than we ever give them credit for. The truth isn't always what we expect, and sometimes it's the hidden parts of our lives that make us who we are. And so, as we moved forward, we decided to rebuild from this unexpected revelation. Maybe things would never be the same, but maybe that was okay. Life, like love, is about learning to adapt, to trust again, and to accept that sometimes the most surprising truths are the ones that bring you closer.